Hello everyone, today I'm going to talk about my top pick in the territorial tax country category. So what is the best country for lifestyle, for taxes in this category? Stay tuned and find out. Hello everyone, my name is Javier Correa from the Research and Development team here at Nomad Capitalist, and as you know, I recently posted a video on this channel talking about my top pick within the non-dom category, and I sort of explained why out of all the options, I, as Javier, would pick Malta if I were to relocate to a non-domiciled tax regime country. Well, today I wanted to do more or less the same, but in the territorial tax category. So as you know, here in Nomad Capitalist, we talk about the different categories of tax-friendly countries that exist, from countries with special tax regimes to non-dom countries to tax havens outright. But today I want to focus on a group of countries that can be very beneficial, which are the territorial tax countries. And these are countries that basically only tax income that is sourced locally, meaning that any foreign income is automatically not taxed. So unlike a non-domiciled tax regime where remittance is an important issue, so you can basically defer taxation or optimize taxation provided that you don't bring the money in. In the case of territorial tax countries, the key focus is that it works mainly for people who have a lot of foreign source income as it relates to the country in which they are living. So you might think, well, Javier, but it's pretty easy. You know, Hong Kong, Panama, Costa Rica, Uruguay, everything is the same, right? As long as the income is foreign sourced. But the important thing is, how does each jurisdiction determine what is locally sourced income and what is not locally sourced income? And in addition to that, the lifestyle perspective. So I will be sharing my views on both, and hopefully leave a comment down below. Tell me if you agree, tell me if you'd pick another country, and let me know if maybe you don't agree with my top choice. Tell me why. If you agree with my top choice, also tell me why. And if you're interested in having a video about another territorial tax jurisdiction, let me know in the comments just as well. So let's talk about my top choice. So my top choice is the country of Panama. Yes, you heard it right. Panama in Central America. So let's start with the lifestyle considerations first. In my case, being born and raised in Venezuela, I, from a very young age started traveling to Miami, Florida. And I like the Miami lifestyle. I like the warm weather. I like the beach. I like the big shopping malls. I like the SUVs. I like the barbecues. And guess what? Panama offers all of this. So basically, one of the main things that I like about Panama, and maybe you can relate to this if you are from the US or Canada, is its similarities to North America in terms of the way of living. In many ways, in Panama, you can replicate the American way of life. So that is something that I appreciate quite a lot. If you go to Panama and you look at malls like the Multiplaza or Town Center in Costa del Este, it is very reminiscent to what you see in places like, Aventura in Miami, Aventura Mall or Brickell. And so that makes it feel very nice, very North American in many ways. In addition to that, you have, the big department stores. You have, the culture of consumption in a way that is very nice, but less aggressive than North America. And that is something I definitely like. In addition to that, I'm a very family-oriented person. I really want to have a wife. I want to have many children. I would love to have 4 or 5 kids. Yes, even as a millennial, I do want to have multiple children. And what I like about Panama is that housing tends to be very big. Like when I've been to Panama, it's surprising to see that you have very large apartments that are quite affordable, obviously compared to what you might find in North America and Europe. So if you're looking for that 700 square meter, 800 square meter apartment, so you can happily live with your family, live with your dogs, maybe have your parents or your in-laws nearby, you're a family-oriented person, then Panama definitely has the infrastructure to support you. In addition to large housing, I would also note that Panama has excellent healthcare for your elderly relatives and even for your newborn or for your young children. So you go to Panama to some of the top private clinics. Again, granted, this is not something generalized. So unfortunately, I do have to recognize that public healthcare in Panama maybe is not up to the same standards. But as I am addressing this video to 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs, I am focusing my healthcare remarks on the private healthcare that is available in Panama. And based on that, I can say that I honestly have been very pleasantly surprised. I've met many physicians that are working in Panama, a lot of whom have been educated, at least to an extent, in North America. The facilities that you might find for private healthcare in Panama are very US style. And again, that makes me feel very comfortable when choosing Panama as a destination to relocate to, especially as I think, for example, of my mother, who is still, thank God, very healthy, but nearing her 60s. These are considerations that one starts having. In addition to that, I would also talk about schooling. I find that international schools in Panama are absolutely fantastic, with many options that follow very English-oriented, American-oriented curriculum and study programs. But I, for example, grew up in an international environment where other languages were also very important. It turns out you also have French schools and German schools, and you even have schools that have mixed programs between French and US. So if you want your kids to have that top quality international education, again, Panama is a top choice. In addition to that, for example, doing business internationally or running a business globally, I think just Panama is a great hub. Just to name a few things, you've got Copa Airlines, the flagship airline for Panama, has direct flights to several destinations across North America. And in my particular case, I have a lot of business and banking interests in the US. And so having that proximity, not only culturally, but also geographically to the United States is very important. Having that, the multiplicity, the big quantity of direct flights to Miami, Florida is absolutely fundamental for banking and business purposes. And Panama definitely does offer that. So in addition to Copa Airlines, you also have major US carriers flying there constantly, like American Airlines, Delta, United, just to name a few. There is also very good connectivity with Europe. So I personally enjoy traveling to Europe a lot, more so for lifestyle than for business, but also occasionally for business. And especially within the context of Nomad Capitalist, we do travel to Europe quite often. And honestly, the connectivity with Europe is fantastic. So France, Germany, Spain, UK, wherever you want to go, you essentially have a direct flight from Panama. So that again is a very, very good advantage. In addition to that, I would also say that from a lifestyle perspective, not only is it similar to the US in terms of the American way of life, but you also have a pretty big expat community that is very nice. So you can make friends from all over the world. As I mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, I grew up in a very international environment surrounded by expats in Caracas. And so one of the things that I look to imitate, or that I search for when I'm thinking about where I'd like to relocate, is a place where I can meet a lot of international people, right? I work at Nomad Capitalist, and I find it fascinating to be working with people from the UK, from Georgia, from Serbia, from Colombia, from Argentina, from places in Southeast Asia. And that cosmopolitan environment isn't that common in Latin America, but you do find it in Panama City, especially with regards to Europe and North America. And so that's something that I very much appreciate in the case of Panama. Another consideration that I would like to mention is the weather. Now, this can be an advantage or a disadvantage depending on your position, but I grew up in the tropics. I am not somebody who enjoys the cold weather. I enjoy the sun. I want to have the beach nearby. I grew up going to the beach every single weekend. I have a yachting culture. So honestly, I enjoy the fact that Panama has warm weather all year round and that I don't have to worry about catching a seasonal cold, because I'm one of those people who gets sick during the winter very easily. So honestly, for me, the weather is a big plus. I would also add that in terms of the infrastructure, so I was mentioning before that apartments and houses tend to be quite big, especially on the more luxurious side of Panama City that is more oriented towards larger, wealthier families. So apartments in places like Costa del Este, houses in places like Santa Maria, they tend to be quite big. But in addition to being quite large in terms of the size, they are also quite new. So, you find construction from the late 90s, from the 2000s, and even very recent construction that isn't even 10 years old. So if you're somebody who likes luxury and who likes to plan their purchases ahead, as I am, and you're thinking about maybe buying that dream house with your wife or your fiance, then, Panama's a pretty cool place to shop in terms of real estate for that. For me, pets are very important and I consider them part of the family. I have 2 dogs myself. I love them with all my heart. I consider myself a very responsible and loving dog parent. And so the fact that Panama City is very dog friendly is also something that I consider when making the decision. So for example, my dogs can go to the mall in Panama, right? There are good veterinary services, maybe not to the same extent that you would find them in a place like the United States, where it's like very, very well developed and like the dog companionship culture is extremely well rooted. But again, I guess part of that American way of life is, the dog is very much taken into consideration as part of your family in Panama. And that is something that I really like and appreciate. So having mentioned all of those lifestyle considerations, I would also like to talk a bit about the business considerations. From a business perspective, not only is Panama a good travel hub, but it is also a good hub for business, meaning that that same expat community I was talking about before does business locally. You have the Panama Canal, which has been in the hands of the Panamanians since 1999 when it was transferred over by President Bill Clinton. Up until that time, the US was handling and managing and administering the Panama Canal. So you do have a place where basically vessels and ships from all over the world converge, and there's a lot of trade going on. So if you like that, very global business environment, then definitely Panama does come to play here as a location where you will feel very, very much at ease. So it is very good from the merchandise perspective if you're buying and selling, trading goods in the traditional sense, but it is also a place that has a very well-developed financial sector. So I wouldn't say Panama is an A+ financial hub, but I would say it's a solid A- or B+, depending on the financial institution you decide to bank in. So for example, you do have very solid banks. You can have multi-currency accounts in Panama. So even though they use the US dollar, you do have the option to open accounts in euros or Swiss francs, depending on the institution you go to. Mexican pesos are also available. So really, even if you look at more exotic currencies, Panama does allow you to hold them. I guess linked to that American culture, you have very good credit card products, which is something that I have failed to see in places like Colombia, failed to see in places like Venezuela, failed to see in places like Argentina. And I would say that next to the US, I have found maybe the best credit card products regionally in Panama. So definitely something that I love and that I support. And linked to that culture of credit cards and credit overall, it is also very feasible to buy property using a mortgage. They have a very mortgage-oriented culture, so you may like that, you may dislike that, but the fact of the matter is you have the option to do that. That is something that is more rare in other jurisdictions that we work with, and I think definitely Panama stands out because of that. So even if you compare it to other territorial tax jurisdictions like Uruguay, Costa Rica, the Dominican Republic, it has more of that feel to it, and that is something that I definitely love. Now, obviously, a big thing for me is taxes. I am the tax terminator after all, and I do have to talk about taxes, and so here is where I think the comparison really comes to life, because we can talk about weather, we can talk about many things, but at the end of the day, Costa Rica has great weather. At the end of the day, Uruguay maybe has more of a sleepier lifestyle, but it does have a great lifestyle for many people. But I think that the major difference when it comes to, Hong Kong, Uruguay, Paraguay, Costa Rica, or Singapore, which is semi-territorial, and Panama is the fact that the Panamanian tax code has a very particular exception when it comes to the territoriality principle, which I find fascinating. And that is the fact that if you're providing a service from Panama, like if you're an attorney, if you're an accountant, if you're an architect, you're an engineer, and you're operating from an office in, let's say, Costa del Este, a nice area of town, like the Brickell of Panama City, and you're providing those services to your global clients. And in addition to that, the economic benefit of those services are enjoyed essentially outside of Panama. Even though you are performing the work on Panamanian soil, that is still considered foreign source income. So Panama is one of those rare territorial tax countries where you can actually have everything on site. You can perform the work in Panama. You can have a local company if you want to. Obviously, here at Nomad Capitalist, we would always recommend having a combination, maybe have a Panamanian entity for certain things, and then have an offshore entity in another jurisdiction that does, another series of services. And so ultimately, it's always good to combine, with having a good, solid offshore corporate structure. But my point is, you don't have to worry about, necessarily getting caught into the tax net and losing the benefits of territoriality simply because you are performing the work from Panama City. Or from any location for that matter in Panama. And that is something that you don't find easily in other territorial tax countries. In addition to that, you also have the benefit of, if you're trading international goods and you're buying and selling merchandise around the world, I've worked with people who buy and sell oil, buy and sell different types of, say, Italian furniture, whatever it is, if it's like physical goods, you are also in luck, because as long as those goods are traded by you from a Panamanian office, but the goods do not enter Panama, that is also considered foreign source income. So you can run that kind of business from Panama and still enjoy a zero tax condition for your business. And the other good thing is that obviously you can also optimize any type of investment income. So if you have US stocks, for example, like I'm a big believer in diversifying. I like having US stocks, I like having UK stocks, Swiss stocks. So any dividend I receive from those offshore investments are essentially tax-free in Panama. So as you can see, overall, it works from a tax perspective, it works from a business perspective. It also works from a family and culture and and lifestyle perspective. And that's why I really think that if I were to choose a country within the territorial tax category, I would definitely choose Panama. And then lastly, I would say, and I do think we're gonna have more videos out on this from some of our colleagues who work more with the immigration side, but I would also add that Panama is very friendly from an immigration perspective. So not only can you work your way towards a very decent passport, but you can also obtain residence in a variety of ways. You can start a company and get residence. You can do a term deposit at the bank and get residence. You can buy real estate and get residence. And so there are really multiple ways. If you happen to be a pensioner, even if your pension comes from like a private company, you can also qualify under certain conditions to get residence in Panama. In fact, pensioners are in luck because Panama is one of those rare places that also issues a kind of like a passport. It's like a travel document for people who are residents through the pensioner visa. So that is something that is also very interesting to look at. It is, I would say, easier to emigrate to Panama than a place like, for example, Hong Kong. Granted, it is maybe not significantly easier than to emigrate to a country like Costa Rica or like Uruguay. But I do think that its immigration friendliness, its business friendliness, its American lifestyle perspective, and its pro-family environment make it an ideal place to set up shop and to enjoy good weather, good taxes, and just have a wonderful life. Obviously, for me as a Latin American, it is close to home. So I think I could share that with many Americans who not only want a soft landing culturally, but who don't want to, go halfway around the world, or across the world, I should say, rather. So for example, there are many interesting places in Southeast Asia that might be also very interesting, but maybe you don't want to have a 12 or 13 or 15 hour difference with the US, and then Panama can be a great solution. Also, if you have kids, if they're born in Panama, citizenship by birth, that's also great. So, well, let me know what you think. This is my thoughts on what country I would move to if I were to select a territorial tax country. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want more information on Panama, or you want more information on any other territorial tax country or jurisdiction, be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. Follow us on Instagram, and I'll see you in the next video.